All right, welcome everyone. I'm Vikas Anand. I am a director of product in Google. Um, really excited to be here to talk to you about APIs and events. And I'm trying to make a case here for unified API and event strategy. So we'll be spending a few minutes walking through why this is important and what can be done to actually improve this experience going forward. So with that said, let's roll. Events are not new. They've been there for a long time. Uh, I'm not talking about events like your birthdays or other things, but events which are actually generating something meaningful in the software space. Events have been used for notifications. Events have been used for, triggering steps in a technology in a workflow, as an example, et cetera, et cetera. What's happening now is that digital is really accelerating in terms of adoption uh, across many different verticals. Gartner estimates that over 95% of new digital workloads will be deployed on a cloud native platform, which is up from 30% in 2021. So as the operating model changes, you know, organizations will turn to a product oriented operating model where the entire value stream of the business and IT will have to be aligned by products. And when you look at key aspects around this report, it shows you the impact of digital and why it's important in the ecosystem. So when we talk about digital and its impact, uh, events uh, have been pervasive as a key part of the whole digital initiative. Whether you look at a vertical like retail or telco, and the reason it's being driven by this is because customer expectations and consumers expectations are high. We're all spoiled as customers today based on the experiences that we're getting from different organizations and products that we choose to use. And what happens with this is they actually disrupts the entire value chain. Organizations have to now reimagine, adapt, and transform all parts of their businesses in order to stay competitive. Let's take one example. Retailers uh, are doing digital transformation using my product, which is Apigee, to achieve results in four key areas: the omni-channel experience, store operations, data and insights, and innovation via ecosystems. So when this happens, of course, you have a combination of events and APIs completely driving this whole experience. Let's take a couple of minutes to walk through one example to understand what really this means in the context of an architecture and a solution. So uh, what I'm going to do is take an example of something that we do every day. We interact, especially through COVID, we interact with uh, events and APIs every time we shop online. E-commerce is an area where the interactions have grown tremendously, especially through COVID, as people were not able to step out. They were all going online to order their groceries, order stuff for clothing, or for sports and other things through online retailers. So what is really happening under the covers? So if you look at the next slide, we can take a look at an architecture which is kind of you know a representative architecture for online retailers. The focus here is to drive engagements with the customer. That means interacting with the customer in person, via mobile, via the web, and the phone are really important things. And this is what we call the front end architecture, which requires a robust platform to support the interaction model. And there are many other things which are a part of this architecture, to really help deliver the value of the product, the pricing, and then, really interfacing with the backend systems or the front end systems or mobile devices with a channel of events which are really enabling this whole experience. Breaking this architecture slide down into a flow, uh, the APIs are actually at the front end. They're driving the end user consumption experience and connecting the e-commerce platform with the mobile application. What happens next is APIs drive the purchase experience as well as connect once you're doing the purchase with payment services. As you purchase a product, then the delivery process has to start. And this is where events are sent to the logistics channel and updates are made to the order backend. And ultimately, an email is triggered to the purchaser saying that there is a product which has been bought and it'll be either delivered or is going to be available for pickup at X amount of time. So as you look at the architecture and the actual flow, you can see the immersive, convergence of APIs and events in actually helping solve for this problem for the retailer in terms of architecture and a business flow for their consumers. Now, this is something which is basically done throughout the lifetime of the order. You have to go through the same flow again and again for any customer that you're trying to support. When we take this and apply it to the broader set of use cases, one question which comes to mind very often is, when should I use an event versus APIs as a part of a holistic solution? So let's spend a few minutes understanding that first. Before we go much deeper, APIs and events are related. Let's understand how. I think the most important question is, are API calls events? The answer to that is yes and no. While API calls are sent messages and messages are core to event-driven systems, API calls are bound by a contract, and that contract is always request response. An API call demands a response, whereas an event does not. Event producers and consumers are completely decoupled. It's because of these differences that they are both so valuable to your architecture. Let's look at the details. So if you break this down, this slide actually is a very clear reflection of what is an API and what is an event stream. APIs generally are synchronous. They are request response. They enable protocols like HTTP, gRPC, GraphQL, and others. Whereas event streams are asynchronous. And they are supporting protocols like MQTT, AMQP, and others. I mean, a good example of an event stream is when you're driving your cars today, a lot of the cars are connected cars, and they are generating events and notifying you on the location, how much gas is left, and many other things. And these are generally happening over MQTT. So these are the distinctions at the technology level between APIs and events, and you can actually apply each for the success of your solution depending on your requirements. So ultimately, this is about having the right tools in your toolkit and knowing when to apply each. So when it comes to APIs, today you can have a really precise control over how and what is consumed. As an example, it's useful when your customer needs a response or additional things, you may want to set that API appropriately. When it comes to events, you get incredible high scale, which works really well for spiky or batch workloads. For example, the Black Friday e-commerce traffic is a great example of this, where customers don't expect an immediate response. They can wait to see their tracking information when an order is placed. So these are tools in your tool bag to build the right solution. Now we've looked at specific examples of how EDA and APIs interact in an e-commerce application. This example used a small and finite set of producers and consumers, but what happens where we see the greatest scale and volume of these events coming from? They are coming from the world of microservices. So let's see how we can extend this concept. Before we proceed, I just wanted to clarify one thing which comes up very often. You know, a lot of people ask the question, what is north-south and east-west traffic? And a lot of times this is used in the context of APIs, microservices, and events today. I wanted to make sure that we are all on the same page. Traffic between backend and service, backend or service, or between a user and a service is what we call as north-south. And that's where we tend to use APIs. Intra-service traffic is often referred to as east-west traffic, and this is where we see a most common use case of EDAs, especially playing a very important role. It's become very common to use microservices to build a modern architecture. This is an example where a complex web application, there are multiple teams working towards a common goal. The application is basically inclusive of many, many microservices. And these microservices are communicating with each other to deliver an experience. More than often, these microservices, are really offering some sort of a consumer experience. For example, the mobile experience when you're trying to do an order from an e-commerce website. Microservices themselves are exposed as APIs, and in this case, as an example, surfaced through Apigee as a platform to offer APIs for this microservice. The complexity comes when the actual microservices start looking more at scale, where it becomes an extremely complex web of point-to-point interactions, creating a significant number of dependencies and points of failure. As application expands horizontally, connections become more and more complex and difficult to understand. So the microservices, while they're providing a great deal of advantages, they also bring in complexity, which you need to manage. And we can basically manage this better by providing a solution which is called as event-driven architecture. This produces a solution for this problem of microservices and a solution at scale, where it provides the ability to reduce dependencies and complexities in your application while still allowing the creation of more and more microservices. EDA allows true separation of concerns, and a producer need not know how an event will be consumed or taken on any dependency of a downstream service. Similarly, the consumer only needs to know that the event will be raised and understands how to utilize it. With this loosely coupled approach, we eliminate hard dependencies between services, as well as are really building an architecture which is enabling the scale of an application as performance needs increase. And this is the power of EDA, which we really think is something which you can embrace for the solutions that you want to solve for. So we've talked about events. We've talked about events in the world of microservices. We've talked about the complexity and how EDA is helping solve it. But what about API management and EDA when working together? So ultimately, from a technology and a strategy perspective, the solution is built up of events and APIs. We can unify and offer the same set of experiences. I think there is an exciting opportunity ahead in productization of EDA as a part of a platform. So the key lessons from API trenches, which we can apply to EDA, are pretty interesting, and they actually can help an EDA deployment quite a lot. API management has been there for a long time and has not just as a concept, but has matured as a product offering. Apigee, the product I have, which is a market leader in the API management space, we are looking at the application of the semantics that we do for APIs to EDA. As an example, when you have more and more providers for events in your IT infrastructure or solutions, it becomes more important to find a standardized way for event discovery, getting access to description, and then providing these events for usage as well. You may also want to apply some security policies on who can use these events versus not. So it's kind of the similar semantics of API management being applied to events. And that's where there are lessons that can be learned from APIs, which can be applied to the EDA architecture. How does it impact your application and business? I think the answer is very simple. EDA prioritization enables you to realize a business opportunity where your first step may be to improve or enrich a customer experience by making it easier for them to access and leverage your product. But after that, it's really up to you. And that's where you can start scaling your EDA across your organization. Finally, we at Google and Google's API management solution, Apigee, have been thought leaders in the space who brought you API products. And we firmly believe that it's time for you to expand from API products to events. Your solutions to include events, which will give you a competitive advantage today by helping you enrich your customer experiences, but will also open up a whole new world of opportunity to develop new products and revenue streams to grow your business. Thank you for listening. I hope this gives you an insight on events, event-driven architecture, and how a unified API and event strategy can help your business.